Welcome to the Possibility Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton, aka Possibilityman. We're committed to bringing you guests who strive to better people's lives and serve as a force for good in the world. Our guest today is Dana George. She holds a college degree in business management. She has worked as a business and financial reporter for newspapers in the United States for over 3 decades. She has written for publications including Bankrate, Dollar Sense, and the famed Dun and Bradstreet. Dan is also a novelist and the author of 4 books. She enjoys telling the stories, as she puts it, of everyday people in her writing. Dana George, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm glad to be here.
Aha. Well, I'm glad you're here as well. I got a ton of questions to ask you. But first, a reminder to our listeners and our viewers, follow, like, and share this podcast wherever you find it. Your support matters and is appreciated. Hey, Dana, this is the Possibility Action Network podcast, and people are always curious about how do people get into the careers that they're in? How did it happen for you?
For me, it was a dream. It was just something I dreamed of doing. And I took a more practical route and got a degree in business. And fortunately, I was able to break in by becoming a business writer. That was my first. I went on to write for all kinds of beats, but my first beat was business. Yeah,
That's awesome.
just so sort of through a side door.
Okay, yeah, but
Yeah.
in terms of this business writing bug, did it hit you like in high school, in elementary school, or earlier in life?
Definitely earlier. Definitely.
Mhm.
By high school, I was rewriting stories written by great authors like Edna St. Vincent Millay, and I would write it in my high school voice. And at the time, it didn't seem weird. I look back and I think, yeah, it's a little bit weird, but I always knew that's what I would do if I could choose anything.
Mhm.
I didn't know that I could choose anything. I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how that happens. That it kind of grows in you, and then you discover it. But guess what, Dana? That's how I found you, through your writing.
Isn't
I'm
that
not sure if I
crazy?
told you this. You were writing a story about the banking industry, and I read it, and I said, I got to talk to this writer. And I
Yeah,
was so happy
that's
that you
nice.
responded. So why though business management as a major?
It is so practical. I don't know that that's true now. Maybe it is, but it was 100 years ago. So it was when any degree would get you a job. You could
Okay.
get, it would get you through the door, and all you needed was a bachelor's.
Mm.
And too bad for my kids, because I didn't realize by the time they went to college that I was supposed to push them to be more uh, A, to prepare for grad school, and B, to find, something that they could actually get a job in.
Uh-huh.
Because when I graduated, a bachelor's degree meant something.
Yeah.
So it was a practical decision. It was a
Uh-huh.
practical choice.
So, was your first then job a writing job, or was it something else initially?
It was actually in business. I worked for
Okay.
Procter and Gamble and H&R Block in Kansas City. And
Mhm.
so I knew I was interested in what they were doing. Curiously, I knew I couldn't do what they were doing because I couldn't ask anyone to buy anything. I'm
Okay.
terrible at that. I'd be a terrible salesperson. But
Mhm.
I liked telling the stories about
Uh,
what they were doing and the people they were working with.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you
Yeah.
you found your niche. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
awesome.
did. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty tight. Yeah.
Yeah. So a writer to me is someone who's always learning. Is that true for you, that you're always learning new things?
It's my favorite part. It's my favorite. I'll never retire, God
Uh,
willing. I
wow.
have no desire to ever retire. It is what I do every day. It's the fun part of being a writer for me is I learn something new every day. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's from the experts, and sometimes it's from someone I'm interviewing, but it's
Okay.
always something.
Uh-huh. So I
Yeah.
want to stay with learning what you've learned for a moment, and I want to focus on a couple of different subtopics, like what have you learned and what have you written about personal finances?
I have learned that there's a lot of shame. People
Hmm.
are There's a lot of shame tied to people's personal finances. When things go south for them, when they don't have enough in their emergency savings account and they lose a job, or something bad happens in their life, they see it as a personal shortcoming.
Mm.
And it isn't. Personal finance is a process. We all make our own mistakes. I've made a million of them. And those are they've been the most powerful teaching tools. But I think that when someone wraps their money or their self-worth in how much they've got put away or how much they're earning, I think that's where they handicap themselves. Because it really doesn't matter how much you earn or how much you have. It's how you manage what you have. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, it makes sense indeed. So from what you've said, though, about mistakes, is it fair to say, and I'm asking you as a writer and as a person who said you have made some mistakes yourself, is
Big
it fair to
ones,
say that a so-called mistake is a learning experience? And would that be true for you as a writer as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all care so much about how we come across and looking like we have it all together. And the truth is none of us do, not all of it, no one has it all together. There are people who know way more than I do on certain subjects, but then they might have weaknesses in other areas, you know? I think what discourages people, the reason people don't sit down and make a monthly budget, or they don't plan for retirement, or they don't do any of those things, is they feel like I've screwed up so bad already. What's why even try? That is the biggest misconception, because every screw up makes you that much smarter.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. What I hear from you is that, and I didn't know that I would get this from a business writer, financial writer. What I hear from you is that people would do better by practicing what I will call self-compassion for.
Absolutely. I love that. That is true. And not caring what other people think of the way that they're doing things, because the way you manage money may be very different than the way I manage money, and we can both be right.
Yeah, I like that. We can both be right. Yeah. In your writing, I've come across things where you've said there's some things that people really need to know. I'm going to throw out a few of them and have you comment on what you think they need to know. For example, I've come across you writing that people need to know about banking. Do you recall what you've written and what you've said about that? What do we need to know about banking?
I can tell you I grew up not learning anything about money. My parents didn't want me to have to worry about it. Not because we had a lot, but because they thought that was a very grown up thing to protect me from, and that one day I would have to learn. The problem with doing that with the female is that 9 out of 10 or more cases of abuse in relationships are also tied to money. There's a big financial abuse component. I have 3 granddaughters. Almost every time I see them, we're talking about money. They're all very young. They're 5, 7, and 10. They've been investing in stocks for a couple of years now.
Wow.
They know how savings accounts work. They're learning about compound interest. I think that, and then there are certain communities that don't trust the banking industry because they've been screwed over by them. And I'm thinking about friends I have who own a bank, own one of the biggest Black banks in the U.S. One thing that they have taught me that I had no idea about was how many people in some communities completely stay away from banks because they don't trust them. And yet, where else are you supposed to grow your money?
Yeah,
you can put it under your mattress, but it's not keeping up with inflation. I think if I had it to do all over again, having children, I'd probably start teaching them about money the day they could speak. I think it's that important to know. And banking is really important because you're an easy mark if you don't understand how much a loan is going to cost you.
That's right. That's important, isn't it? Yeah. There's a difference between 2% and 22%, isn't it? Right, Dana?
Yeah, there's a difference between 2% and 3%. I mean, 1% interest can cost you thousands over the life of a loan. And just knowing that just makes you, I think, a little bit more prepared before you go into a bank.
Yeah, that's great. So what have you learned and what have you written about, let's say, banking and investing?
Investing's another one. We all think that somebody else is the expert. The truth is we're all wet behind the ears when we start. The first time you make your first investment, you probably have no idea what you're doing. And that's okay. That's all right, because it doesn't take long to intuitively understand what's happening and to know that some things are going to lose. What you wish for is that you have more winners than losers, because then you end up on top. But if I say I hold, I say I'm invested in 10 different things and 3 of them are just real stinkers, that's okay as long as my other 7 are okay. I'm still going to end up on top. I think people don't invest because, number one, they think they don't know enough. None of us know enough until we start. And then number 2, because they think that they don't have enough to invest. You can start with $1. You don't, investing doesn't take millions of dollars or thousands of dollars. You can literally start, open an IRA in a lot of different places with no money. Wow. And if you can put a few dollars in a month, you're investing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good to know. So in terms of financial literacy, what do you want us to know as the average Joe who doesn't know very much, the people that you write about? What do you want us to know about financial literacy?
I think it's that you probably know more than you think you do. If you don't recognize the terms, that's okay. You still know what it means. Or you probably know what interest means, whether you recognize how compound interest works daily, monthly, yearly, whatever. I think the only person in your way is you. It's okay not to know everything, because you don't go into anything knowing everything. You don't start dance lessons knowing how to do a dance. You don't start guitar lessons, knowing how to play. And you don't start investing or even banking with all the knowledge in your head already. I think we discourage ourselves.
Yeah. Jen, I love that so much, because what you're saying is that we can learn as we go, and that's okay.
It's how it works. It's not only okay, it's how it works. And you can never ask too many questions. Say you're confused about the way even your checking account works. Go in and sit down with someone at your bank or credit union and have them go through it step by step with you. You have no idea how much people appreciate being asked.
Yeah.
You don't have to know everything.
Wow. That's good information. In my city, when I drive about, I see all kinds of advertisements, and you do too in your city. I want to just throw out some of the ones that I've seen, and hopefully you'll just comment and let me know if you've written about them, what you've said about those things. Is it okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. So in my city, in my state, wherever I drive around, anywhere, I would see posters, signs, or even on television commercials about title loans. Get your title loans here. What do you think about that? Well, I don't want to ask you to make a judgment about the business. Have you seen them? And what do you want to share with us about that?
I'm okay making a judgment on it because I've seen how many people they hurt.
Okay.
I'm all right with that. And also, never do I get more hate mail than when I write about title loans or payday loans. I don't think people realize that when they go in and fill out and it's okay not to realize it. Again, there's no shame in this. The way those contracts are worded makes it look like you're paying, high interest rate, but you think, that's not that much higher than a credit card would charge me. The problem is the way they're compounding it, and that you owe that money back within 4 weeks. So the real interest rate they're charging is easily over 400%. Each state has their own, it's over 400%. About 8 out of 10, I think it's 8 out of 10 title loans are not repaid within the period they're supposed to be repaid, because the interest rate ends up being so high. So what those folks have to do is roll it over into a new loan with the interest rate. So they've got their old loan. Now they've got all the fees from the new loan added to that, and they're stuck again. It's an endless cycle. Each state sets their own limits on how much a title loan companies, payday loan companies can charge, right? In some states, it's over 1,000%. Now, that isn't what your contract says. Your contract might say 22% or 26%. They're compounding it differently than, say, your bank is when you take out an auto loan.
Oh my gosh.
So I have nothing. There are so many alternatives to title loans. There are so many things you can do.
Hmm.
Can I give you one example of that?
Yes, indeed. Please.
Join a credit union.
Mhm.
If you even if you have a bank account somewhere else, open up a bank account at a credit union. Build a relationship with them, because credit union members are not only members, they're also owners. So
Mhm.
say you need a title loan, or you think you need a payday loan or a title loan to pay your utility bill, right? So you've got a $300 bill and it's just, oh my gosh, this is so much higher than usual and I can't do it and they're going to shut off my lights. Once you've got an established relationship with a financial institution, you can go in and say, what can I do about a short-term loan? This is where I'm at. I want to avoid a title loan or a payday loan. What can I do? And they have options for you, especially if you've been banking someplace for a while, or you've been a member of a credit union for a while. They can look and see how long you've stuck with them.
Mhm.
They also have way more flexibility, so they can decide, we're going to take a chance on you.
Mhm.
And for a small loan, taking it from anybody else, or sell something,
Mhm. Mhm.
or borrow it from a family member, do whatever you can do to avoid walking through the doors and signing up for interest that's going to be over 400%.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why I wanted to talk with you, because we don't know what we don't know, and financial
Right.
literacy involves learning a little more about what you don't know. So that's good information.
Can I
I've also
can I add one
Yes,
thing? Oh,
of course,
I just want
add
to
as
add one
many.
thing to that. It's the whole shame component again.
Mhm.
I've been writing about finances for like 30 years.
Mm.
I think I'm kind of learning my thing. I think but I'm still learning. When I look at a contract, a title loan contract, it could fool me.
Mm.
It definitely, it's not written clearly. It's not, you don't know how much you can end up paying. You don't understand what the odds are of getting stuck in that cycle.
Yeah,
So if it happens to somebody, that's not on them. Not the first time. It's not on them. It's on the way the contract is written. It's on the
right.
way the laws do not protect them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I like
I
that,
just
and
wanted to
once
add
again,
that.
self-compassion, we're not, trying to beat anyone up about that. But
No.
whenever I see those things, I'm thinking that should be criminal. There should be a law against this stuff.
Right.
Why don't you
Right.
suppose that state governments and even the federal government doesn't better regulate this sector of our economy?
I think there have definitely been efforts to do so. And I think some states are better at it than others, for sure.
Mhm.
There are some states there are a couple of states where title loans, or not title loans, I'm sorry, where payday loans are not legal.
Yeah,
Um, I think it kind of depends on
yeah,
who you're voting for and who your
right,
leadership is and what their priorities are,
right,
and who they're being financed by, who your political leaders, who their donors are. Um,
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of an unpleasant truth, but
Hmm.
I think it's like, the people who should be protected are probably those who are struggling most financially. There are
Hmm.
also those who are least likely to have the extra money to donate to a political fund.
Yeah.
So they're sort of moved to the back of the line.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Another
Yeah.
one, this is number two, that I pay attention to,
Mhm.
I call it the 0% credit card trap. Now, for me, it could be
Mhm.
a good thing, but it could also be a very bad thing. What do you think about
Mhm.
that?
There are a couple issues with that. Sometimes, and it's not just credit cards. Sometimes when you're offered 0% interest, you have to be careful about, because they're going to get the money somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So is it going to be like, say you go into a furniture store and they say 0% interest? I can guarantee you they mark up the furniture. You're paying more for the furniture. So in the end, you're going to pay anyway. The only time 0% makes sense, and it's too bad because it's just offered to people typically with high credit scores anyway.
Mhm.
But the only time it makes sense is, you've got a credit score of 700 and you want to transfer a balance from a high interest credit card to a 0% credit card for
Mhm.
18 months. That makes sense as long as you have it paid off in those 18 months. 18 months in one day, you're going back to a standard interest rate,
Yeah.
and you could find yourself stuck in that cycle. So I think if something sounds too good to be true, Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah, I hear you. It is a game for sure. The lender is betting, right, Dana, that you're not going to pay it off. And if you don't pay it off, then of course you're
Absolutely
doing
true.
20+% interest rate. Yeah. So
Right.
mhm.
Right. And it's not just that, even if part of their, again, it's the same thing. If they have 10 consumers all going for the 0%, and say 3 of them or 4 of them pay it all off, it's the other ones they're banking on, because that's money in their pocket then.
Yeah. Well, we do need to be
Yeah.
careful because there's some lenders out there that are trying to get us, right? So we do need to be careful.
Oh, some, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are those who are just, how they, all the bad lenders give everybody a bad name, because there are also some really good lenders out there.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
for sure. That's for sure. I mean, that's
Yeah.
with everything. Some good car dealership salesmen, some not so good ones. So yeah, that's for
Exactly.
sure.
Right.
Here's another piece, Dana, that I get solicitations or offers all the time in the mail about the rewards and cards. There's some bank is going to say they got a better offer. What do you think about
Right.
the rewards system in the United States, both in the United States, but it's probably true all over the world? What do you think about that, and how do we manage that?
I think you have to be honest with yourself. Before I was financially mature, I wouldn't have trusted me with a rewards card. I wouldn't, because rewards make no sense if you're carrying a balance from month to month.
Right.
I use one rewards card, and I pay it off every Friday. Just to rack up the rewards, and I never carry a balance. I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. I wouldn't have, and then it would have cost me more than the rewards would have ever been worth.
Yeah.
But I think that they know that most people don't. I don't want to say they're not financially mature. I want to say that maybe they don't have the confidence to dive into what they need to know to use the card, instead of letting the card use them.
Oh boy. Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with really from 1% to maybe 5%. It's not like 90% reward, right? So it's a bit sneaky.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit sneaky.
Right. It's
So
very.
what you've said there is very important, and I guess the same applies to even a short-term loan. If you get it, you got to be certain that you can pay it off. If you can't pay it off, then you
Have a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And prioritize that plan. It feels a lot like we're owned by our debt. It sort of feels like our debt owns us, and rewards card, if you're just sort of moving into learning more about finances, rewards cards are not a bad way to test your discipline. To maybe even just charge $15 worth of things one month and make sure it's paid off before the next cycle. It's not a bad way to get your feet wet.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, Dana, do you remember the first time you received an offer from a bank? I'm talking about during your working career or even in college. Do you remember the first offer you got from a bank? A free check or a card, with a credit limit of, let's say, $500. Do you remember?
Yeah. I fell for all those when I was young.
Yeah,
I fell for all of those. Yeah, I was exactly their market. I was their demographic. Yeah, right during college and right after college.
Yeah,
you too. Yeah, it is, and that's how you learn. That's not a bad thing. It is in the moment when you're stuck in it, when you're mired in it, it's a bad thing. But that's another thing. I think a lot of people think they're in so deep into debt that why even worry about the future, or I think that's another lie we tell ourselves when we're stressed.
Yeah, I mean, and this is why
because anyone can get out.
And this is why financial literacy is so important. I remember I got my first full-time job, Dana, at at this company, and I got a visa offer in the mail, $300. I remember distinctly, $300. Use it anytime. And I told my mother, I said, "Mama, I got this from the bank." My mother said, "Give me that money."
Did she?
Yes, she did. But once again, though, she wasn't exposed to financial literacy either. So, yeah,
right.
And that's a trap for us. I mean, I laugh at it now.
Did you get stuck for a bit?
I didn't get stuck, no. But I think I learned to understand the game over the years. but it took me a while to figure it out. It is a game. They got their bet, and of course, you got to have a better plan for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that I used to think, oh, I bet they hate me because I pay this off every week. They don't, because most people don't. I don't know if most people don't, but a lot of people don't, or they find themselves tight one week or 1 month, and they think, oh, I'll do it next time. I'll pay it off next time around. Interest is just vile. Just paying high interest is vile.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm smiling and laughing because this brings up so many memories for me, this conversation. I remember using a 0% card for a purpose. And once the purpose was over, I didn't use the card again. And guess what the bank did? They canceled the card. They closed their account. So what? I thought that was
That's
funny.
Nasty.
Yeah.
It is, but what's so damaging about that is, and what do you remember what year that was by any chance?
Oh gosh, it might have been in the 90s. I don't remember really. I don't.
What's so damaging about that is every time we choose to cancel a credit card, or a creditor chooses to cancel because we're not using enough. I got a letter from, I think it was Citibank a few months ago, saying you're not using your card enough, and if you don't start using it, we're going to cancel it. That's a ding on your credit score. That is not good for your credit score anytime a card gets canceled, or even if I canceled it myself, it wouldn't be good. So what a nasty thing to do, to offer it to you, and then you don't play by their rules, so then they cancel it. That's kind of dirty.
Yeah, and that is dirty. I'm glad you used the word nasty. And I'm glad you mentioned that bank, because it was Citibank that did it to me as well.
Was it Citibank with you too?
Yeah. But look, you
That's
mentioned
funny.
something
All
else.
the thousands I've charged with them over the years and paid off, but now it's been too long since I used their card. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, oh my gosh, it's just something. Oh, the other part of bank cards is that if you are in a certain income bracket and if your credit score is good, they may offer you like a huge, credit limit. But at the same time, if you carry that thing a few months, you could be paying from 18% a month or in interest or higher. Is that right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. 35%, 35.99 quite often, depending on the state. It's crazy. And that's another thing about writing about finances. It's really fun and insightful. Is that, and it's not a happy story, but it's a true story. I cannot tell you the number of people I have met through the years who make gobs of money, or they inherited just a ridiculous amount, and they cannot manage their finances because they can't say no to those offers.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't. And then you meet a school teacher making 45,000 or whatever a year and living this really great life because they can live below their means, because they know how to manage money. It's wild. But they probably learned by experience. They weren't born knowing that.
Yeah, exactly. There's another thing I consider to be a financial trap. I don't know how you see it. And that is, there's some companies that, I'm going to use the word, prey on people who get into an adverse situation. Let's say they had an accident, they waited for their insurance payout, and this company somehow tracks them. I don't know how they do it. And then they offer, we'll give you the money up front. And then, of course, there's a cost for that. And from my experience, and I've talked to young people who are in this, that cost is extremely high. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't want to cite specific companies here, but do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, people will do it with life insurance. If you've lost somebody and they suspect you might need cash now instead of waiting for the life insurance to pay out or whatever, and even it extends even worse than that. The diver Greg Louganis, right?
What was that?
The Olympic diver Greg Louganis.
Oh yes, yeah.
There was a big scheme when the AIDS crisis was kind of at its apex, when it was, back when it was a death sentence. Insurance companies buying up their life insurance, or investors buying up their life insurance policies. So they'd say, hey, listen, you need this money to get by now, and we'll give you this lump sum right now, and then when you die, we'll collect your life insurance policy. And they were just ripping them off just left and right. Greg Louganis actually sold his, which is, you wouldn't, that's a little bit surprising. But he's been a great spokesman since that time, and has been very open about sharing his experience. But when anybody's you don't know is offering to help you, you have to be suspect.
Right. You surely have to perform that due diligence about
Exactly.
that. There's so many things that come to mind here. So I may be jump around for a moment, but credit scores. Back in the late 70s, when I first started working as a full-time employee, I don't think credit scores existed. And I don't recall exactly when they started, but that seems to be a big thing now. What's your credit score? Your credit score. What can you tell us about that?
I can tell you that it feels very arbitrary. The big three, like, FICO especially. Let's talk about FICO because they're not part of the big three, but the Fair Isaac Corporation, who kind of most retailers, most lenders base their lending decisions on your FICO score. FICO score protects the method they use to come up with your credit score, like they're protecting their baby from the Nazis. I mean, they're literally protecting it, not letting you anywhere near it. How they do it. And then you think people try to do the smart thing, like, okay, I just, I don't want to screw up my credit score, so I'll only get one credit card and I won't get any more than that ever. That hurts your credit score. Wow. Because you don't have the mix they're looking for. You don't have the experience they're looking for. Credit scores have way, way overinflated. In my opinion, this is definitely not the opinion of my employer. I don't know what their opinion is on it actually, but if you look at demographics, who has the high credit scores, it's typically the usual suspects. It's, it's people in privileged upbringings. It's typically people who look a certain way. And I think something, if anything, changes in the next, say, 10 years, I would suspect that credit scores may go the way of like college entrance exams. Like some colleges don't use ACT or SAT anymore because they weren't terribly reflective of us as a whole society. I think the same is true of credit scores. I think they're super, super important today. I don't know that I believe they will be in 10 years.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think something else is going to have to take its place.
I got you. Right. But I think what you're suggesting is that if a person, because of a certain situation, happen to have a credit score of less than 600, they may be forced to get high interest, even to buy a mortgage, right? Maybe forced into a high mortgage rate. That doesn't benefit the person. That benefits the banker, the mortgage company, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's sort of the people who are in charge of it, the lenders and the actual the people who are the big three, like the credit report companies are not in charge of it, but like FICO. It behooves everybody who's making the decisions to keep things the way they are, because there's so much profit in it. If you go in today to buy a car and you have a credit score of 600 or 580, you're going to pay way more than somebody who comes in with a 720 or 800.
That's for sure.
So it's basically sticking it to the people who are already in trouble.
That's for sure.
But what I have to say to those people is you don't have to be stuck there. You don't have to. You think you are. You're honestly, our brains tell us things that are not true when we're stressed out. And there are a few things more stressful than overwhelming debt. So, but you don't have to be stuck there. It may take you 3 years to crawl out. It may take you 5 years, but everybody, we all, especially those of us who write about finances, we all know a million people who were once really, really in debt and don't carry debt now, or manage their debt, or manipulate their debt. So I don't want anyone to think they're stuck, because that's not the way it works.
That's right. It's possible to get out of it.
It is possible. Absolutely.
Dana, what I also like about you as a writer is that you are quite versatile. I mean, you not only do business and finance, but you also do historical novels. So I want to just kind of shift to that for a moment. Firstly, would you share with us what drew you to writing historical novels?
My parents, that's what I mean, that's what we talked about. I never went to Disneyland growing up or anything like that. Our vacations were at Gettysburg and Fort Osage and well, any place there was a war. My dad was a Marine and my mom was CIA. So they had this really interesting background, and what they wanted us to know that there was a big world out there, number one, and that history was super important. So we're all, my siblings and I are all a little obsessed with history. Yeah.
So, what historical topics attract you? Is it those battlefields like Gettysburg that you mentioned, and are there others?
I will tell you, I think it was after I wrote my third book, I realized, dang, I write a lot about death. I think it isn't the battles that attract me, and it's not the or the catastrophes. One of my books was about Johnstown flood. It's not the incident, it's the people who navigate those instances. It's the people who survive them. It's the people who are the rescuers, the heroes. I can't get enough of those people. I think I'm naturally a coward myself, so anybody who's brave fascinates me, and those are the folks I write about.
Yeah, well, you're definitely not a coward, because you mentioned at least a big bank during this interview, and you've taken on the title load people, so you're not a coward.
Yeah, no, I'm used to the mail from them. I'm pretty used to it.
So, Dana, how do you think history then informs life? Or let me ask the question differently. Do you think history informs our life? And if so, how?
There's nothing new on Earth. There's nothing new. So if we use history to learn how it was mishandled previously, or how it was handled well, it gives us, we can make more informed decisions. I think even with finances, one thing that brings me comfort every time, because I'm a nervous Nelly, every time I worry about what's going to happen to my portfolio, so that my husband, he does want to retire someday, even though I don't, so that he can retire someday. And I worry about that. And then it only lasts for about 2 minutes, because it doesn't take me long to go back through history to see what's happened, at least in the US, since the first stock exchange opened. Wow. We have a whole lot of historical data that shows what we can expect next. And so history can be a comfort, and it can be a learning tool.
What is your favorite historical period in US history?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I write a lot about this 19th century, about late 19th century. I think while we were still settling the country, and I try to write it from also the Native Americans' viewpoint, what life was like to be displaced.
Okay.
I think that's probably it must be, because that's where I go back to anytime I need comfort, and I want the comfort of writing or researching. That's normally where I go to.
Yeah. Hey, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just
also
feel like,
all political history.
Okay, I want to ask you, and you can dodge this one. Maybe I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe I am. Do you like President Abraham Lincoln?
I think his boyhood home's about how many miles from me right now, so I probably have to be careful in case his ghost is around. Yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely, as an imperfect, flawed human being, absolutely. I think his courage, again, I'm a chicken, so courageous people always amaze me. Yeah, totally. But even if you go back further, our founding fathers were kind of a hot mess. They did some really, there was some immoral stuff going on, right? Yeah. And you can't exactly, I can't look at them through the lens of today. I have to try mercifully to look at people through the lens of the time in which they lived. So, but the marvelous thing is, as screwed up as, and you could, with each one of them were, they did this courageous thing. Yeah. They stood up to this much, much larger power. Right. So I guess, yeah.
I like
it's like anybody.
I like the way you put that, Dana. It's beautiful. You said, even as flawed as they were, just to highlight it, underscore it, they did some crazy things, but they still produced something that was amazing. and those of us in the United States are still occupying it today.
Right, right. And you think about someone like John Adams, who, I mean, admittedly, only a mother could love, and his wife, clearly. Not, just sort of a cantankerous guy, kind of hard to get along with. The anti-George Washington. John Adams was clearly much, much brighter, naturally brighter. But George Washington was so likable and all of that stuff. When the British were trying to talk the colonies into backing off and just going back to normal, they wouldn't, except for Adams. Adams was in trouble. It's because nobody liked Adams. Adams knew that to be brave enough to do something that you're convicted to do, when it could cost you everything, is just beyond anything I can imagine.
Yeah. So you've written 4 novels. Give us the titles of some of them, and give us just a snapshot of what you try to do with a couple of them.
The first one is called, excuse me, and it's the one that still does the best. It was called McAllister's War. And so what I do is, I love the research. It took me 9 years to research that puppy. But I take everything and get it as historically correct as I humanly can. And then I put a few of my own fictional characters in the middle of it. That is certainly nothing new, but it was a way. We had just moved to a new state, and it was a way for me to familiarize myself with the area. It takes place in Northwest Iowa, 1857. It's a true story of a group of renegade Sioux who took a bunch of people hostage, and just sort of how all their lives shook out. I told the story from 2 perspectives, the Sioux and the settlers, to try to see both sides myself, to try to understand a little bit better what was going on. That was cool though, because a lot of people go to Northwest Iowa and never leave. So I got to interview people whose great grandfathers shared a story with them, and whose, I could use the historical data I found, but also some really great anecdotes from people who knew somebody. And then one takes place in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, 1889, Johnstown flood, and it's about a group of orphans. And one takes place in Lawrence, Kansas, in 1863. It was the William Quantrell's raid on Lawrence, Kansas, just at the end of the Civil War, or maybe right after the Civil War ended. Right after the Civil War ended. And then my last one was a ghost story. It was a paranormal. I'm terrified of ghost stories, so it was. But what's interesting is I had the same nightmare for years. Excuse me. I apologize. Had the same nightmare for years, and so I started telling the story that fit the nightmare. And it was about a realtor who would go into houses, and every house she went into to show, she'd meet a new ghost and have to figure out what they're. Yeah. Do you know, the whole time I wrote that book, and it took me about 2 years to write it, I didn't have one nightmare.
Wow.
Day I sent it off to my publisher, my nightmares came back.
Okay, that's the next one in that genre. That's the next book in that genre.
That's right? The next, somebody's giving me the stories, feeding me the stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you write every day? Tell us about your writing. How do you work as a writer? Not your newspaper writing, but for your novels especially.
Novels I've put on a back burner for a while. I wanted to, when I got back into financial writing full time, I really wanted to dedicate myself to learning, like, literally everything I can learn about it. And I don't mean the stuff that, about the intricacies of how the stock market works. I don't mean that. I mean the everyday stuff that we all need. So I read a lot. I write 8 hours a day at least. And that's probably too much. I mean, that's a lot of writing because your brain gets a little empty. That's research too, though. That I kind of added that in.
Yeah, that's great. But that's inspiring, So
but it starts with coffee.
It starts with coffee. Yeah.
And usually Hershey Kisses or something totally unhealthy. Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
I read somewhere, or heard this somewhere, where someone said, if you're a writer, write, or writers write. If you're not writing, you're not a writer. So What do you think about that? And
Right.
any thoughts about that, Dana? That writer's right?
Right. And
Okay.
it's another thing about this for writers.
Mm.
When I was trying to get a book published, I remember thinking the deeper I got into it, the more I thought, I'm never gonna get published. I'm never gonna get published. And I started believing that. And it was enough to make me stop for a while. It's just what you tell yourself. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. I remember reading somewhere, and I don't even remember whose quote it was. It's not the best writers who necessarily get published. It's the people who just refuse to give up. And I think that's true of most everything in life.
I like that. That's a good one.
Except for maybe pole vaulter. If you're not a good pole vaulter, maybe you should give up. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like being a college student, right? It's not necessarily the smartest who graduates, but the one who sticks to it, so
that's exactly right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But then look, I've just enjoyed talking with you. Is there anything else either about financial literacy or about the historical novels that you want to leave us with today?
My novels are available on Amazon, if anyone's interested in those. But more importantly, I want people to know that wherever they are today is okay. And not to beat yourself up about money, and not to equate your self-worth with how much you have in the bank, because the two are totally, totally unrelated. And the danger of doing that is you could have billions in the bank, and if you lose it, if you never learned your own value as a human being, then you end up with nothing. But if you always knew you were valuable with or without money, then losing your money doesn't matter as much. And whatever you lose, you can always find more.
Dana, I mean, you just said something that just touched me in a very special way. I mean, you said it, just casually, but gosh, it just resonated with me. You said, and I'm going to quote you just to underscore it. You said, wherever you are today, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's profound. I think that's another book you got, about personal development, human development as well. Do you ever do books on human development, on human transformation, any of those kinds of books?
Yeah. It's always the folks who, I read a lot of those. But I think life teaches us all. We get to a certain point. It sounds like you and I started working around the same time. We get to a certain point where we realize that we only get to do this once, and that we need to be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
And no matter what that thing is, give yourself a chance.
Yeah. You got a lot of wisdom for sure. I hear a lot of it coming from you. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time on the Possibility Action Network show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. What a blast talking to you.
Okay. You've been listening to the Possibility Action Network podcast. Our guest today has been Dana George. I'm your host, Stephen Middleton. Until next time, good day